From Geppetto Studios in New Freedom, Pennsylvania, welcome to the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast, your home for inclusive, positive geek culture, where we talk about movies, comics, music, books, and whatever else we feel like. Please welcome your host.
It doesn't look fun or interesting in any way to me.
Brad Mendenhall.
Hey kids, it is episode 233 of the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast. Scott Carrelli returns for our annual summer movie talk. It was a ton of fun, and I decided to break it into 2 episodes. So, let's dive in. I am always excited for this time of year because I get to record one of my favorite shows. It's a tradition, and Scott Carrelli is back from Deuling Genre. Scott, how you doing?
I'm great, Brad. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's our annual summer movie talk, and we're going to have a lot of deja vu.
I can't believe this is happening again already. Already, and yet it feels like no time has passed, and so much time has passed.
At this time last year, when we last spoke, we really still didn't know how profound this was going to affect everything. I mean, when it first started happening, when the pandemic first started, I mean, there was people talking, it's like, oh, it could be as much as 4 weeks. It's like, yeah, a year later.
Yeah.
And not only are things not back to normal, but you see there's so much talk of plans being made, even after the pandemic over, that we're going to be feeling the effects for a long time.
Yeah.
And movies are not going to be the same. They just recently announced the Knives Out sequels. Those are going straight to Netflix?
Right. Well, I mean, Netflix is making them. I guess we don't really know if there's going to be some sort of theatrical release. I know that when Knives Out came out, at least here in LA, we had screenings in 35 millimeter. So it seems to me that Rian Johnson has some sort of connection to the theater going experience. So there's a chance that part of that deal could have been some kind of limited theatrical run, even if it is day and date with hitting Netflix, but they haven't announced anything about the release part of it yet.
It's just interesting. Like, I'm thinking of last year, what was it, 2 years ago, Underground 6. I mean, that was a movie Michael Bay directed, starring Ryan Reynolds, that went straight to Netflix, or when it even all started with the Will Smith movie Bright.
Right.
Bright looked like a pretty mediocre movie.
Yeah.
You sort of got it, but there was no reason Underground 6 couldn't have done well in theaters.
Yeah. I mean, we've got that new Zack Snyder zombie movie coming out directly to Netflix next month too. I think the reason that filmmakers like to go to Netflix is because my understanding is that Netflix doesn't give any creative notes on movies. They just trust the filmmaker to make the movie they want to make, and they release it as is because they don't have to worry about getting people into a theater or anything. It's just about having content to maintain that monthly subscription fee that people are already paying. I think that's the reason that people, the filmmakers go to Netflix, is not because Netflix doesn't think that the movie's couldn't make any money in theaters. I think it's more so that they're just I don't have to worry about people studio people on my back telling me how to make my movie.
Yeah, I'm sure it varies from director to director, from film to film. How often is it the choice of the director or the producer, and how much of it is just a production company created? And I'm just asking this because I really don't. The business side of movies, I'm above average at, but I'm not fantastic at. Have there been cases where the director has completed a film or is deep into a film and then finds out, oh, by the way, it's not going into theaters because Netflix offered the most money for it?
Oh yeah, I mean that happens all the time. I mean all of the movies that are coming directly to HBO Max this year, none of those filmmakers were informed before that decision was made. As a result, they had to pay out all of those filmmakers a considerable amount of money because there are no residuals from films being put on streaming services. So they had to be paid out for what would be the equivalent of like the first 4 weeks of theatrical residuals. For those of you listening who might not know what residuals are basically you get paid an upfront fee for being in a movie or making a movie, and then you get a piece of the box office. And usually that's something like 1% or something like that. It's something like really, really low. But when your movie makes $500 million, 1% of $500 million is a lot of money. So yeah, they weren't getting those first dollar grosses on their residuals. And a lot of people were very unhappy when Warner Brothers made that announcement about the HBO Max deal. They don't necessarily get a say in that. If it's the best thing for their production company, they can just go and do that. The only time it's different is when the production company is owned by the filmmaker of like some kind of deal like that. Like DreamWorks was like owned by Spielberg, that kind of thing.
Remember, Christopher Nolan was especially vocal with his displeasure of the getting released on HBO Max.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
We're diving into summer movies. It's a weird one. Some of these we've talked about before, which I'm interested in because I think there might be some cases of we're going to feel different about some of these movies now. We're sitting on them for a year. We might look at them fresher as like, oh, you know what? Now's a better time for this movie, or it might feel better, or and some of them might be like, wow, Black Widow. We already thought it was coming out too late last year.
Yeah,
I'm not sure a year extra waiting is going to help that.
We'll see.
But let's start May 7th. Wrath of Man. Guy Ritchie and Jason Statham together.
Mm-hmm.
What are your feelings? We've talked about one or two Guy Ritchie movies before, but what is your view on Guy Ritchie, especially in this type of film? And Jason Statham is a much different presence in film now than he was then.
I am not the biggest Jason Statham fan. I actually think that Jason Statham is a lot funnier than he's usually allowed to be in things. Typically, he's the straight man, and I think he's incredibly boring and uncharismatic as the straight man. I don't really like any of his movies where he doesn't get to be funny, because I think he's funny. Like, I know that a lot of people really don't like Hobbs and Shaw. I liked Hobbs and Shaw. I think it's a fun movie. Like, it's basic. It's a pretty basic movie, but it's sort of like eating a good bowl of cereal, where you're like, yeah, I know what this is. I know what I'm getting into, and I'm going to feel satisfied at the other end of this. And then I'm not really going to think much about that movie. And that's kind of how I feel about Hobbs and Shaw. But like, it's fun because Jason Statham is fun when he's allowed to be funny. And this looks a little too grim to me. I was really disappointed by Guy Ritchie's last movie, which was a return to the mob stuff. He did The Gentleman, which I didn't really feel like had any kind of personality. It was just kind of bland. And this looks like more of the same, just sort of bland to me. I'm not super interested. I think Guy Ritchie, for me, as a director, is a guy who, in order for me to really like one of his movies, the screenplay has to be something really, really special, because I don't think when he's given something that isn't particularly special, I don't think his directorial choices, I think he gets bored easily. And I think that he gets a little carried away with style because he has no substance to work with. Like, I really like Man from U.N.C.L.E. I don't know how often I'm going to see that now that I know that it co-stars a cannibal, but I did really like Man from U.N.C.L.E. and a few of his other films, but I find him very hit and miss. And this looks like a miss to me, at least a miss for me, I should say, not an objective miss. I don't know. I'm sure somebody out there would like this kind of thing, but it's not me.
I think the only way I'm going to like this is if everyone else who sees it hates it. By that, I mean, if it's a really misleading trailer. Because by the trailer, it looks like something that you could just as easily switch out Jason Statham for Liam Neeson. It looks like a Liam Neeson actioner.
Yeah, it really does.
The only way that might work is, and these movies happen all the time, where they try to make it look like a bland action movie, and then you go to the theaters, it's like, oh my God, it's really different and interesting. And it just turns out that whoever was in control of making the trailer lied to the audience. And when those movies have happened, and I'm thinking of Talented Mr. Ripley, because I'm really current on my examples. I don't know if you remember that the ads for Talent Mr. Ripley made it look like a movie where Matt Damon was in love with and sort of obsessed with Gwyneth Paltrow. And then in the actual movie, he was in love with and obsessed with Jude Law.
Right. I remember the backlash on that, the homophobic backlash on that.
There was that, but also it was dishonest.
Sure. It's similar to like how they promoted Drive.
Right.
Which was promoted like a Fast and the Furious movie. And then you saw it and it's absolutely not that. It's great, but it's not a Fast and the Furious movie. Far from it. And yeah, a lot of people were really upset about that.
It's going to be one of those things where the only way I'm going to like it is if I hear everyone coming out, it's like, oh, that wasn't the movie I expected at all. I expected him to do a lot of kicking and Liam Neesoning.
Yeah.
And no. And it's like, oh, okay, now I'm going to see it. May 14th, two movies very much on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Peter Rabbit 2.
Oh.
And Spiral from the Book of Saw.
Well, I have nothing to say about Peter Rabbit 2. I got good. I'm glad all of the people working had a job. That is not a movie for me. So like, I don't care that it got made. I'm never going to watch it. It's fine. It's whatever. The Spiral movie, if I hear that this is really good, I might check it out. I will say I watched the trailer, and what it reminded me of was like, because the big story behind Spiral is that Chris Rock himself, being a big Saw fan, walked into Lionsgate and was like, I have a pitch for a Saw reboot. And this was that movie. And they greenlit it like on the spot. Hired a screenwriter to write his idea, and now he's starring in it. Got this thing about a copycat killer. The thing that I think is interesting about it, because I guess my understanding was that his pitch on it was like, why are all of the Saw movies from the perspective of the victims? It's the least interesting perspective. We should do a Saw movie from the perspective of the police trying to solve the case. It could be like Seven, but set in the Saw universe. In theory, that's a really good idea, because honestly, the worst parts of the Saw movies, right, are the torture porn part. And if we're just coming in at the end of it, where we don't actually see the person get tortured, we just see the result of the situation they were in, I think that's more interesting, much in the way that like Seven is like that. What I think is interesting about this movie is that it looks more expensive and more like a real movie than any of the Saw movies did, but it still looks way cheaper than like Seven, like a David Fincher movie. So it's in this weird middle ground where I think everybody's heart is in the right place in terms of like the idea behind this movie. I could see why you would want to make a movie like this. I'm not the biggest Saw fan, and so I'm not going to go see it, but only if I hear like a unanimous, like everyone being like, okay, no, this movie actually rules, I might check it out then. But in general, this is not my franchise. The trailer didn't do anything to change my mind, I guess.
I rarely like Chris Rock as an actor. He is an amazing comedian, an amazing presence. He was a really good interviewer. He had a talk show on HBO for a while and did some really different stuff on that as an actor. And I just watched him on Fargo recently. He's really good until he starts yelling. And then all of a sudden it starts feeling like a comedy bit. And maybe that's my problem. But he definitely has that yelling guy persona.
He has the same problem that I think Ben Stiller has. As long as he's not yelling, he can play a lot of different characters. But as soon as he starts yelling, he just becomes uptight, anxiety guy with anger issues. Like that's what every Ben Stiller character becomes as soon as he raises his voice. And I think Chris Rock has a similar issue where as soon as he starts raising his voice, he just becomes the same character across the board. Not the same as Ben Stiller, but like I think the comparison is apt.
Now, regarding Peter Rabbit 2, it's funny because I remember when the first movie came out, nobody cared, and then not as much as Paddington, but it had a little bit of Paddington thing where people were like, oh, this is significantly better than people think. And if you would have told me when that first movie came out, it's like, oh, we're going to do this again. It's like, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Rose Byrne gets work, and I like Rose Byrne, so yay.
Yeah. I hope all of the kids who are fans of that first movie are excited about this new one.
Jumping ahead to May 21st. Now, this is one that you already mentioned briefly. That's going to be on Netflix, but it's coming out on the 21st. Army of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Zack Snyder, who all of a sudden everyone's in love with again. Zombie movie with Dave Bautista.
Yeah.
Eh.
I mean, granted, Zack Snyder directed a zombie film, Dawn of the Dead, the Dawn of the Dead remake, which was written by James Gunn. This, notably, not written by James Gunn. It doesn't look fun or interesting in any way to me. The trailer was just bad, in my opinion, which is really saying something because I don't think I've ever seen a bad Zack Snyder trailer. You know, you can say all you want about whether the guy is good or bad, but he knows how to cut a trailer. That Army of the Dead trailer is really, really awful. I'm hoping that the reason that the trailer was bad is because he didn't cut it and it was a Netflix trailer that they were just putting out while his focus was on Justice League. And now that his focus is off of Justice League, I'm hoping that he's cutting his own trailer that's going to be a lot better than the one that Netflix released last month. Regardless, I'm sort of in the bag for this because I am very curious about what this is going to be. I'll tell you this: if I find that I'm bored halfway through, I'm not going to be afraid to turn it off because it's on Netflix. If this was in theaters, would I go see it? Probably not. The fact that it's on Netflix, I might give it a shot and see if I can if it's interesting enough to hold my attention. But man, I am so tired of zombies. I'm just so tired of zombies. I'm tired of the entire zombie genre, all kinds of zombies. I'm sick of all of them. So this has to be really interesting in order to grab my attention.
It feels a little late. I mean, honestly, it feels like several years too late. I mean, I know people are still coming out with new Walking Dead shows.
Walking Dead's been on for like 12 years at this point, and you're just now coming out with a new zombie movie? That's crazy. It kind of reminds me of Zombieland 2 when that came out. And it's like, I feel like I said Zombieland 2 and at least half of your listenership, which is like, oh, right, they did make a sequel to that, didn't they? Because like, who remembers that? It came so late, 10 years after the first one. Like, who cares?
I remember we talked about that, and we said at the time it was weird that was coming out, and it was weird that everyone was coming back for it.
Yeah. Still weird. I don't know. It's a movie that shouldn't exist. I should say that. I just like it. Just like what? How did that get greenlit at this point? Who did they think was going to care? I don't know.
They all just really must have liked working together.
Yeah, that's got to be what it is. But even still, like, that's still not an excuse for the studio to pay for it. I don't think they made their budget back. Like, no one saw that movie. It flopped. Very strange.
So there's one other movie coming out that day, and it's not going to be a big movie, unless I'm completely wrong. But I want to get your opinion on it, if you've even seen anything about it. I saw the first trailer for it. 4 Good Days.
I don't know this one.
It's Glenn Close and Mila Kunis. And Mila Kunis plays a drug addict, and they uglied her up for this movie. She looks gaunt and sickly. And the whole thing is like there's a very aggressive drug treatment plan where basically they give her some sort of medication or some sort of treatment where she would physically be unable to abuse drugs anymore. But to go on this treatment, she has to have 4 days clean. And it's just sort of like a very small movie of her and Glenn Close as her mother trying to survive the 4 days. And very obviously, Mila Kunis trying to go outside of her comfort zone, which I'm not dismissing at all.
Yeah.
But it's just very interesting to see her try that. And when I saw it, I was like, I'm trying to think, it's like, what do I think of Mila Kunis?
Right.
I've seen her in movies, and she certainly can be a likable presence, and she's been in good movies, but I can't say that I ever left a movie and thought that movie was great because she gave such a knockout performance.
Yeah, the closest I can think of is the one with Jason Segel. the comedy on an island with Jason Segel and Kristen Bell.
And that was a really funny movie. I'm also drawing on the blank on that.
On the title, yeah.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Yeah, Forgetting Sarah Marshall. She's good at Forgetting Sarah Marshall, but she's also like, wasn't really marketed as like a major part of that movie. It wasn't until you watched it that you were like, oh, Mila Kunis is in this. And but she was good in that. This looks like I'm looking at pictures of it now. I feel like this could go either way. Like, good for her for like getting out of her comfort zone and like trying to take on like a dramatic role. And it's really cool that the producers of this movie let that happen, because sometimes actors just get like trapped in a certain type of movie, and producers aren't gonna like go out on a limb to be like, oh yeah, I'm sure Mila Kunis could do a movie like this. I will say, looking at the poster, it does look a poster and a few like images, it does look a bit like local theater-ish to me. I don't know, I haven't seen a trailer. Hopefully the trailer looks better than these images do. There is a little bit of a local theater quality to some of this that I'm not digging. That's just like, I don't think the makeup looks great on either of them, honestly, her or Glenn Close.
I saw the trailer, and my first thought was like, hey, this feels a little hillbilly elegy.
Oh yeah.
The makeup isn't great, and it just seems like a movie where they convince everyone is like, hey, you do this movie, we're going to ugly you up, and you're going to get award consideration.
They were right about hillbilly elegy. that was Glenn Close too, right?
Yeah.
And
she got an Oscar nomination and a Razzie nomination for the same role.
Yep. Yeah, she sure did. She memorized that monologue about Terminators, and she said the whole thing on camera. That made it all the way through the edit process, the whole thing. There are two kinds of Terminators, Brad. Oh,
I think the Razzies will definitely end up being right about that one.
Yeah.
Hopping forward to May the 28th, Quiet Place 2?
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be good.
The thing I'm excited about is that I don't know anything about this sequel. Nothing. I don't know anything about the plot. It was like almost going to be released. It was like releasing the next week before lockdown. And then lockdown happened and it pushed it all back. But I love that I don't know anything about what this movie is. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I'm also excited because I will be fully vaccinated by then. So I'll be able to see it in theaters, which I think is the best place to watch A Quiet Place. Because that theater going experience of seeing that first one in a theater was like, I've never experienced anything like that before. Just like people not eating popcorn because they don't want to disturb the silence. That's it was pretty crazy. So I'm looking forward to something similar to that with this.
I like John Krasinski a lot. Him returning to direct that. Emily Blunt's wonderful. Part of me would have liked to see the follow-up just be that him and her doing another movie and just different and not a sequel.
Sure.
But I have no doubt that it's going to be good. It will be good.
Yeah, I mean, Krasinski said that he wouldn't have signed on for the sequel if there wasn't a good idea behind it. That gives me hope because like he directed that first one and it did so well. He had a blank check, he could have done anything. And the fact that he chose to do a sequel tells me that there must have been, he must have had a really cool idea for the sequel, and he's writing it himself. Whereas the last one was a screenplay that he took on as director. This he wrote from scratch himself. So I think there's a lot going into this one that is interesting in terms of like a sequel. These original properties, I would have been fine if that was it. It wasn't like the end of A Quiet Place was screaming for a sequel. No one was screaming. It was A Quiet Place. It wasn't screaming for a sequel, but so the fact that he has an idea for one and chose to do that after the monumental success of that first one, I don't know. It gives me hope that this is going to be a good one.
The same day, Cruella comes out.
Yeah.
I know this is all lands at the feet of Melissa. Okay, can you say the word? Because I'm dying here.
Maleficent.
Maleficent. Yes, thank you. How are they doing this with Cruella de Vil? I mean, the character, the whole motivation is to kidnap and murder puppies and turn them into a coat. Now you're going to make her, if not the good guy, the protagonist. And I love Emma Stone. Emma Stone is great. And the trailer doesn't look terrible by any stretch, but how are they going to make this work?
I don't know, but I am so in the bag for this movie, Brad. I know that it's being sort of made fun of like left and right with people. But the thing that I like about this is that Disney is making all of these animated to live action remakes. A lot of them are kind of pointless, where you go and see it and it's like, yeah, I just spent 2 hours watching that, and I'd rather have just been watching the animated one. The thing that I like about this, and to a lesser extent, Maleficent, I like that they're going in a different direction with it. Well, I mean, granted, they already, going back to Glenn Close, they already remade 101 Dalmatians in live action. It was the first live action remake they did back in the 90s. So, like, I like that they're going a different direction. I love the style of it. I am so in the bag for Emma Stone's performance here. So I'm going to watch this with, like, just sort of a mind of, like, exactly what you're saying. Like, how are they going to pull this off? I don't know. And I don't know if they will, but I'm so curious that I'm definitely going to watch this. I don't know. There's something about this. And it's Craig Gillespie who directed I, Tonya, which is a movie I really liked a lot. I'm just totally in the bag for this movie. I don't know. It just looks like a demented Devil Wears Prada. And yeah, Cruella de Vil. Like, yeah, she wanted to kill a bunch of dogs. Also, those dogs weren't real. Also, she's not real. It's not like it's like a real person that we're like, making a movie about who wanted to kill a bunch of dogs. She's not real. The dogs weren't real either. I think this looks insane in the best of ways. And so I'm really looking forward to this. I wish that Disney would take more like weird chances with their stuff like this seems to be.
Yeah, you're saying the dogs aren't real. Yeah. That sounds like a cat owner talking.
Well, to be fair, I am a cat owner, but
yeah, I know. Yeah, you're a dog owner. You're in the bag for Keanu Reeves shooting a bunch of people for 3 movies because of what happened to that puppy.
I mean, I was too. It was a cute puppy.
It was a cute puppy. No, I completely get what you're saying. It's just, I love Emma Stone. I thought she was great in the Spider-Man movies that were so maligned.
Oh, those are the best parts of it for sure. I think too. Have you seen the latest trailer, the one that just dropped like a couple days ago?
I did.
Okay. Yeah, they're like doing this weird thing where they're treating they're treating her Cruella name as like a supervillain. There's like a scene in it where Emma Stone, who's playing like the Devil Wears Prada like kind of character, like her boss, and there's a scene between them where she's like talking about Cruella to Cruella, but Cruella has her like red hair, like frumpy, like Clark Kent kind of persona. I didn't realize, like, I thought this was going to be a story about how she becomes Cruella, but instead it's like a story about like this girl who Cruella is like this other identity that she keeps, like a super, like, I don't know. That's just so crazy. I'm so interested to see what this story ends up being.
June 4th, we have the first sort of superhero movie, and nothing's come out about this. What do you know about Samaritan?
I don't know any. I remember hearing about it. I didn't even know this was coming out. I remember hearing about it when it was picked up. When it was like greenlit. And I like the idea of Sylvester Stallone playing like an aging superhero. I thought that was a cool idea. I have a feeling that this is so there's a Mark Miller comic book that is about an aging sort of Flash Gordon type character. It was picked up to be turned into a film, and I believe it was going to star Sylvester Stallone as the character. It was called Starlight, and it was Mark Miller and Gorn Parlov. And I believe it was going to star Sylvester Stallone, and ended up not going anywhere, not getting greenlit. And I almost wonder if this movie, Samaritan, is a weird like development hop, skip, and a jump from that being in development and him being like sort of lightly attached to that. And then down the line, like that falls through. And then Stallone is like, oh, I really wanted to play an aging superhero. And then eventually this movie came out of his desire for that, because it does feel like this is like almost an answer to that falling through.
Which that's basically the story of how Cobra happened from Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh, okay.
Are you familiar with that story?
No.
Sylvester Stallone was set up to do Beverly Hills Cop, and there was creative differences. And then basically they split the property, and I'm giving the details. I'm not getting perfect. Then they created Cobra, and then they turned Beverly Hills Cop into more of a comedy vehicle, sort of an action comedy vehicle for Eddie Murphy. Originally, the character's name was like Axel Cabretti.
Oh
boy, Cobra was such a bad movie.
Well, yeah. Anytime Sylvester Stallone tries to look cool, he never quite nails it. Like he always has to have that little bit of being out of touch, that Rocky Balboa energy of like, well, I'm just trying my best, that kind of vibe. If he doesn't have that vibe, the movie is usually not very good. It's why I don't like any of those Expendables movies, because it's just him being like, look how cool I am. I can still be cool. It's like, can you? I don't know, man.
There's certain performers who you can tell when they get too much influence over the product they're in. Bruce Willis is like that. Ben Affleck, Michael J. Fox. This is how you and I actually first met, was because you were doing the Back to the Future Minute.
Mm-hmm.
And you came on because I dislike Back to the Future 2 so much.
Right. That's right.
My thing is, you could tell that Michael J. Fox was suddenly a huge star when it came to Back to the Future 2, and he was doing more action stuff.
Right.
And I was like, it didn't work because there he was punching out Biff and looking like a badass. And I was like, Michael J. Fox, I like Michael J. Fox. He's such great comedic timing, and there's so many things he does well, but he's still like 4'2". I never buy him doing action stuff. And then there's other stuff, Spin City, a show that I thought I really wanted to like, and I liked at some points, but every character on that show would comment about how good looking and sexy he was.
Yeah, that's true. That definitely happened a lot.
I was like, oh, well, that's what happens when you're the producer of your own TV show. And like, I think the second or third episode, the plot was he was voted the sexiest man alive by one of the local New York magazines. It's like, what?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was definitely a thing. Yeah, it's hard to remember that time period because he's just been not in the public eye for so long. Yeah, you're definitely right. There was definitely an era where that was a thing.
Stallone has that too, where you can tell when he has too much influence, because then you have Expendables, where he's the old guy, but he's still the most badass of the badass. So it just depends on with Samaritan, how much influence does he have? Or Julius Avery is the director of it. Was Avery able to pitch to him this movie and get him to buy in? Yeah,
I what I'm hoping for is Rocky Balboa with a superhero at the center of it. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. If that's what this ends up being, I think it could be really cool. The fact that this comes out in 2 months and we haven't seen, I don't even think, an image from it, doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence.
This could end up getting pushed back.
Yeah, that's also possible for sure.
The same day, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It's coming out.
I'm really looking forward to that. I love the proper Conjuring movies, the two with Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. I think they're both really, really good. So I'm very much looking forward to this. Also, the thing that makes this one interesting, if I'm not mistaken, is that it isn't like a haunting, like a proper haunting, the way the last two were. I think it's based on something else. It's like another deal. I think something to do with like a murder suspect who says that they were like possessed by a demon when they did it, and them having to like prove that she is possessed. So I think there's room for that to be a lot different from the other two films, which are really just haunting movies. I think that's cool. It's cool that they're trying something new with this one.
I like Patrick Wilson so much. He really seems like he's found his niche where he's not going to be the lead of Aquaman, but he's going to be the bad guy of Aquaman, and he's perfect at that.
Yeah.
And then when you get sort of like the B movie-ish stuff like this, he's a great leading man for it, like Bill Pullman was.
Oh, yeah.
Bill Pullman had like a lot of range, and he could play the leading man in Spaceballs, where it wasn't a big budget movie and he had some comedic timing, but he wasn't going to be the lead in when it came to Independence Day. That was a Will Smith movie, but he got a nice supporting role in that. That's a nice place to be because you sort of get some juicier roles doing it.
Very true.
The following week, June 11th, In the Heights.
Yeah.
This is one we talked about last year. You were more into it than I was, and this is one I've come around to.
Yeah, I don't think we'd seen a trailer yet when we talked about it last year.
The trailer looks great. Because I have Disney Plus, I've watched Hamilton a lot since then, and before I'd only ever seen clips and heard the music. Obviously very different. This is going to be great. I don't know how much money it'll make, and also aside from the fact that finances are different now.
Sure.
Regardless of how much money it makes, there's going to be a bunch of kids in high school that this is going to be their favorite movie, and they're going to be insufferable singing music from this.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And trying to get their drama departments to put on this show.
Nature is healing, Brad.
And you know what? There's a place for the movie that isn't a huge hit, but it becomes a bunch of theater kids' favorite movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks great. I think it looks like a musical captured on film, which I think is the biggest compliment I could give. A lot of times these musical to movie adaptations are over edited and the director tries to reinvent the wheel. And it seems like John M. Chu knew to just put the just hold the camera somewhere and let the actors do all the work, because it really does seem like he's doing a good job of like building the mise en scène in the background, like having a really colorful street, really great costumes and choreography, and letting that do most of the work as opposed to wacky camera angles or lots of editing and stuff. I think when people direct musicals on film, they tend to get hung up on like, it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything, but like you're doing the right thing if that's how it feels, because I think that you want to capture that live energy, and you're only going to do that if you just stop moving the camera so much and stop cutting between shots so much. Based on the trailers anyway, it looks like that's kind of what we're going to be getting here.
Is this the first movie musical that's come out since Cats?
Yes.
All right, that's just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Cats is a literal nightmare. It was before the movie. It was always a literal nightmare, and the movie just, in a way, the movie is the perfect adaptation of Cats, because it is as much of a nightmare as...
It was a lousy play that turned into a lousy movie.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
It's a tourist trap play.
Cats has been and always will be a nightmare. So, I think that will be its legacy. In the Heights looks great, though.
So the following week, June 16th, The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard.
Never saw the first one.
I saw clips. It's just Ryan Reynolds doing the Ryan Reynolds thing.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me, too. Crazy cast in this one, though, because you had Ryan Reynolds and Sam Jackson in the last one, but now this one adds Salma Hayek, Frank Grillo, Richard E. Grant, Antonio Banderas, Morgan Freeman. That's crazy. It's a great cast for a movie that I couldn't possibly care about. I can't bring myself. There's nothing about this that is interesting to me beyond the cast.
Ryan Reynolds. I'd like to see another Deadpool movie, but everything else he does now just feels like him practicing for the next Deadpool movie.
Sure.
You talked about Hobbs and Shaw. He even did like some of the same bits.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. But that was a surprise. No one knew they were getting Ryan Reynolds when they showed up for Hobbs and Shaw. No one knew he was in that movie. They kept that on the DL. But I definitely agree. That's definitely what he was doing. They should have just they just sort of said, screw it and let him be Deadpool in the movie.
Yeah, that would have been great.
It would have been really great.
I'm literally drinking gin and tonic with aviation gin right now because I liked Ryan Reynolds' ads for that.
Oh, yeah.
And I like him. He's very likable and charming. His Twitter account's great and all that. But it's like, you know what? It's just, he's a one-trick pony right now. I think he needs Quentin Tarantino or some director that he'll respect.
Yeah. I don't think Michael Bay was that guy. I don't think that worked out. Yeah, I definitely agree. I would also like to see him in he would probably never do it at this point, but I would love to see him in a rom-com again. He's done, I think, 2 rom-coms, and they're both really good because he's extremely charming. The rom-com elements of the first Deadpool are excellent. They're very good. And he did The Proposal with Sandra Bullock back in the day. And I think that's a super underrated movie. I think that's really good. And I think he did one that was it was political, he worked for politicians or something like that. I forget what it was called. I don't remember. It was Sometimes Maybe or something like that. It was a generic title like that.
Be My Maybe or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was something like that. But yeah, he's really charming in both of those. I would love to see him in more of a low key movie again. Whether or not he would have any interest in doing that kind of movie, because he might think that he's beyond it at this point. But he needs the movies that he does need to be built around his charisma, because his charisma is insane. I think some of these movies, like The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, the Hitman's Bodyguard movies, it's yeah, I guess you can put Ryan Reynolds in the generic movie and it'll pop because it's Ryan Reynolds, but the movie isn't going to be any more memorable. It's just people are just going to remember that Ryan Reynolds was in it, and that's kind of it. I hear that happens a lot. If a property is really exciting, they'll put a less than exciting actor in it because they know that people will go see it regardless of who's in it, because the movie is good enough or the script is good enough or what have you. And then they reserve A-list celebrities for mediocre to bad movies because they'll be able to save it because people will go for them, even if the movie's not very good. And I feel like this is Ryan Reynolds is dipping into that territory, which is a bummer, because once you're at 10 million or something like that for per movie, I think you start getting into that territory where they're okay, great, you cost 10 million. We're only going to put you in movies that are worth putting you in for that amount of money, which is a broken movie that needs you and your personality to fix it.
Well, there's also a thing where when you have that big name who costs that much money, you're going to have to cater to them. And then all of a sudden you turn whatever movie you have into in this case, a Ryan Reynolds movie. And I remember and it's been talked about before, where they offered the lead role in The Matrix to Will Smith at one point, and it didn't work out. And my understanding, and of course there's been 20 stories about this, that Will Smith, his people wanted to turn it into a Will Smith movie where he was going to say damn and a lot of his big budget movie hijinks. It didn't work out. And then they brought Keanu Reeves, and Keanu Reeves was at a little bit of a lull in his career at that point. And also I think he's just a more agreeable actor. Keanu Reeves, who has his weaknesses as an actor, but he does what he's asked to do.
Yes. Even if he can't pull it off, like in Dracula, he still did what he was told, for sure.
Will Smith has even said, the movie wouldn't have worked nearly as well if you had Will Smith basically doing his sort of wink to the camera shtick.
Right.
We were talking about Sylvester Stallone not that long ago, and I remember not that long ago I saw a YouTube series called Cinematic Excrement that was talking about the second or third Rambo movie. And they said, if you watch First Blood, that was a really small movie and talking about PTSD. We think of these movies as action movies, but it was actually not nearly as much of an action movie as you think about, and had some of Sylvester Stallone's best acting when he's having a breakdown talking about the horrors of war and stuff like that. And then that movie made a ton of money, and then Sylvester Stallone started writing the movies, and had a lot more control as a producer, and then he blows away half of the Korean army or the Vietnamese army.
Right.
It's like, oh, when you're paying them so much and they get producer credit and all that, all of a sudden these movies really change. That's sort of what happens with Ryan Reynolds. Is like, if I were Christopher Nolan, I wouldn't necessarily want him in my movie, because Christopher Nolan, of course, wants to be and has earned the right to sort of run his own movies, and you don't want another alpha in the mix.
Right.
Moving to Friday, June the 18th, 3 movies coming out. One I bet you're really interested in, but we're going to make you wait for it. First is a movie I haven't heard anything about, but it's worth talking about, Fatherhood with Kevin Hart.
Mm-hmm.
I like Kevin Hart.
Yeah, he's trying. This is, I think, the second time he's trying to make a movie like this. I think he's trying to make that move that so many comedic actors do, like Robin Williams and Jim Carrey, where they make the drama and they use everything that they've learned as a comedic star, and they try to do more serious stuff. And, he tried that a couple of years ago with the Bryan Cranston movie that he co-starred in with. And now he's doing this fatherhood one. I honestly hope it works. I really hope it works, because this would be a really great move for him if they do a good job with it, I guess. I would love to see Kevin Hart in a movie where he's not playing the Kevin Hart character for once. I think that would be really, really cool.
I like Kevin Hart a lot. I think his comedy's terrible.
Yeah.
Not his comedic movies. I think his stand-up comedy is lousy.
Yeah.
But I like so much about him because he's very similar to The Rock in that he puts so much effort into everything. He's obviously really driven and very smart. And I like driven, smart people. The story that I always go back to with Kevin Hart on his comedy tours, and again, I think his comedy's very mediocre at best. But on his tours, he started tweeting out, and he's very good at using social media. And he would tweet out, "It's like, hey, I'm going for a jog tomorrow. Meet me at my hotel and at 7:00 in the morning or whatever, and I'm going to go for a run." And as he became more and more successful, all of a sudden, hundreds and then thousands of people would be in his hotel parking lot ready to go for a jog. And then he start turning into fundraising 5Ks.
Oh.
And I like that, where he's a guy who knows how to engage his audience. And all of a sudden, it's like monetizing basically a morning jog for fundraising and money going to charity. And I like that. And so when you see really smart performers who know, he could try keeping doing his comedy shows, and you see what happened to Andrew Dice Clay, where if you just keep doing the same basic shtick over and over again and rest on what you're doing, it's not going to last forever. So he's smart enough to know that he needs to diversify and stuff. So just from a business standpoint, I respect that. And he definitely has great energy. So yeah, I hope it works. He's one of those guys that I root for. May not be the best actor. I think he's a mediocre comedian, but I root for him, and there's a likability to him.
Yeah, for sure. And this is being directed by Paul Weitz, who also directed About a Boy. So if it has a similar vibe to that, I think this could be really good, theoretically.
The same day, Luca comes out, and I know it's a bit early. I've heard so little about this movie, and usually the Pixar buzz picks up earlier, and I wonder, maybe this date may not be in stone, or Disney still is trying to figure out how to release some of these movies. But it's Pixar, so it's going to be good, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely set in stone, because they're releasing it same day on Disney Plus for free, like free with a subscription, the same way they did Soul back on Christmas Day. Yeah, I don't know. The thing that I'm really excited about with this, I think, is one, I like what I'm seeing in the trailer in terms of story, which you don't usually get a lot in the first Pixar trailer, but I like the I guess the conceit that, like, if they get wet, they turn back into sea monsters. So I think it's fun, and like when they're dry, they're little boys. But also, I'm being Italian myself, seeing something about Italian culture that isn't the mafia is a refreshing change of pace. It's something that I don't get a lot of in movies, and I really like that. It's typically what you get are either you get mafia movies or you get
coming of age.
well, not even coming of age. You usually get like because like the coming of age stuff is typically like stuff that's either it's like a mix of coming in of age and mafia, or it's like an actual Italian film that's like a coming of age. In terms of like America, you either get mafia stuff or you get women traveling to Italy to find themselves and the wacky hijinks that they get in while they're out there. Like what was that? The Under the Tuscan something.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, something like that with like Ashley Judd. You get movies like that. It's nice to see my heritage in a movie, and it's not a bunch of mobsters eating spaghetti. Not that I don't like mobsters eating spaghetti movies, but you know, it's nice to see more than just that.
Here's how oblivious I am, Scott. When you said that, I was like, oh, Scott's Italian. I'm like, wait a minute, his last name's Carrelli, and he owns a cat named Cannoli.
Yeah.
How's this a surprise to me?
Yeah, I'm very Italian. All of my family is from Brooklyn.
Because I've never made you disappointing spaghetti, and apparently that's how I would know if you were Italian or not.
Yeah, that's when the that's when the rolling pin would come out.
The same day, I'm sure you're excited about this, the Sparks Brothers.
Oh yeah, I've already seen it.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I've already seen it. I watched a bunch of movies at Sundance, and this is one of them. It rules. It's really long. It's very detailed look at Sparks, the band that most people have probably never heard of. I certainly wasn't super familiar with them before the documentary was announced. Watching it, I was really, because I was very curious about how Edgar Wright as a filmmaker would translate to directing a documentary, what that would look like. What I was really watching it, I was just kind of blown away by how much of his personality as a filmmaker really does come through the editing. And that seems like a silly thing to say, but I guess I'm just so focused on the pitter patter of his writing and the way that his shots are composed that I never really thought about just the editing in and of itself. And there's no better way to like get an idea of what Edgar Wright's editing prowess is than watching him edit talking heads and stock footage. It's crazy how much of his personality comes through this movie, despite it not really feeling like any of his scripted stuff. It's an excellent documentary, and it flew by. It is long. I think it's like, I want to say it's like 2.5 hours. At least the cut I saw was 2.5 hours. I'm assuming that it's going to remain the same if that's what it was at Sundance, but it's definitely worth watching, even if you don't know anything about Sparks. In fact, I would say it probably works even better if you don't know anything about Sparks, because you're definitely not going to be bored. So yeah, it was excellent. It's an excellent documentary. I'm looking forward to watching it again.
And I'm looking at the description is like your favorite band's favorite band. I'm a huge fan of musicians like that. One of my all-time favorite musicians was a guy, Chris Whitley, who passed away probably 15 years ago. I actually had his brother on the show. I'm such a big fan that I wanted to talk about his legacy. No one's ever heard of this guy, but he was like Keith Richards' favorite band. Bruce Springsteen and John Mayer have sung his music in concerts because they were such big fans of his. Dave Matthews said it's like, that Chris Whitley's music inspired him more and it touched him more than his own music did. I know that you like some off the beaten path musicians as well.
Yeah, certainly.
I love documentaries and stories or whatever where that musician that you like that maybe had a hit song, maybe didn't, but has worked regularly and has inspired other musicians and inspired other entertainment, and then giving that guy his just due. And Edgar Wright is such a music guy, and music is so important for his work. Thinking of Baby Driver, and Edgar Wright in Baby Driver, music was so important, and he certainly had like I guess, hit songs or songs you were familiar with, but he also wasn't afraid to incorporate stuff that you'd never heard of that was brilliant. And it's like the soundtrack was just a wonderful discovery. I'm really excited for that. I'm not as big an Edgar Wright fan as you are. I don't know that anyone is. But I really like what he does. I like what he stands for. Yeah, I'm really interested to see that and sort of getting his view on stuff. So I'm looking forward to that.
It is an extensive documentary. This Sparks started in the late 60s and is still, I think they're planning on recording and releasing a new album this year. So, and I think I want to say there's something like they go through something like 28 albums over the course of this documentary. And they just keep reinventing themselves, and it's crazy. I don't know that I've ever seen a documentary as extensive as this outside of like Ken Burns. And it isn't anything like Ken Burns. It's like a completely different energy, but it's as extensive as a Ken Burns documentary. So take that for what you will.
Now, the version that's going to hit theaters, do you think it's going to be the same thing that you saw?
I hope so. I would love to see this again in theaters to experience it that way. Yeah, I hope so. I think it would be really, really cool.
Now we're going to completely, God, I don't want to say switch gears, but that's what we're going to do. June 25th.
Just own it. Own the switching gears.
Switching gears to Fast and the Furious 9, F9. I mean, we talked about this last year. I don't think anything's changed.
No, I'm going to watch it. I'm in the bag. It's fine.
It's exactly the movie that it's supposed to be.
Exactly. Yep.
Will The Rock be in this?
No.
In a cameo? Not at all?
No, I don't think at all.
They made a really big deal about the feud with Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson, and also Tyrese.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Who was talking a lot of trash against The Rock. They've definitely in public sort of implied that the beef has been taken care of. But do we think that's real, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the beef is real, and I think that the beef is just two A-list celebrities. You have Vin Diesel, who started this franchise, feels that this is his franchise, and then you have The Rock, who was not a franchise starter when he came on to the franchise, but did come on and instantly turn the franchise into like what the version of the franchise that everyone loves, right? And so I think he feels a little bit of ownership on that, or at least feels like he should have some credit for that. But Vin Diesel is like, no, I think he has like the fear that his franchise is going to be taken over by this other guy. And I think that's all it is I think they're just like, I think The Rock just wants respect for what he gave the franchise. And I think Vin Diesel is worried about losing respect and The Rock sort of taking over the franchise. So I think, if the beef has been set aside, I think it's just the agreement that like, okay, let's just agree that you'll stay in your spinoff series and I will take over these main ones, and we just won't work together because I don't think our personalities fit on screen together. And I don't think that's the incorrect choice. I think at a certain point they both got way too big to be in the same franchise. Like Vin Diesel doesn't seem to understand that these movies are an ensemble. I don't know that necessarily even The Rock understands that they're an ensemble. I think that The Rock feels like he's co-lead, and I think Vin Diesel thinks he is the lead. I don't know. It just gets egos, man. It just gets a little messy, and I understand both their perspectives, and I don't think that the movie is going to hurt not having The Rock in it. I mean, it's going to have John Cena in it. John Cena's great. I think he's really funny. I think he could have an energy to his character that could be a lot of fun to add to the Fast and Furious, the last few Fast and Furious movies. That's all I got for this one. I mean, I'm excited to see it. That's it. That's all I got.
And Justin Lin's directing it, and I like Justin Lin.
Me too.
I like the Star Trek movie he directed. I like that he's bringing Han back. Yeah, this is gonna be great. It's gonna be wildly stupid.
Yep, exactly. That's all we want.
I'm just going to keep watching them until they actually go into space, and then I'll probably keep watching it. The following week, nothing's coming out except for Zola.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
It was going to be it's a movie about a stripper that was going to be directed by James Franco, but I don't think it was because Franco,
right?
He might be persona non grata.
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, this is that thing that was based on that Twitter thread, I think. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I think we've learned that people don't go to stripper movies.
That's not true. What was that movie like 2 years ago that like almost won all those Oscars?
Oh, you're right. The one with Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah, that was Lady Goodfellas. It ruled. It was really great. I forget what the name of it was.
You know, whenever I think of stripper movies, I still think of Showgirls and Striptease.
Yeah, sure.
Which, by the way, Striptease was a pretty good movie except for the lead.
Sure. Yeah. That's yeah, definitely. I'm not opposed to a movie about that world. Somebody made a joke about them making a show about a strip club that Ted Lasso becomes like the manager of, and and then like just like sort of like tweeted out a bunch of scenes from what that show would be, and I'm like, yeah, I would watch that.
I watched the hell out of it. By the way, Striptease stars Demi Moore. Demi Moore was terrible in it because Demi Moore has a very, very limited range, and everyone else was really funny in that movie. We just spoke about that movie way more than anyone needs to. That wraps episode 233. Big thanks to Scott Carrelli. He's a great guy, and I'd have him on all the time if he wasn't already busy with Deuling Genre Productions. In fact, he's such a great guy, we're going to have him back next episode to finish our summer movie talk. Till then, in the words of Jar Pardon,
see you in the funny pages.
Subscribe to the Cosmic Geppetto podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever quality podcasts can be found. Rate and review us while there. Follow us on Twitter at Cosmic G-Pod, and we will follow you back. Unless you're a jerk. We don't follow jerks. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cosmic Geppetto. We love hearing your ideas for upcoming episodes. Email us at cosmicgeppetto@comcast.net.
No one was screaming. It was a quiet place.